Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. For those of you that don't know, my name is Ryan Segall, and I'm really excited to share with you guys some of the things that I've made in my time here at Berry. So, a little about me. I'm actually a computer science major, so some of you may be wondering why I'm even here today. This class, 499, is a replacement for the computer science capstone, because the computer science major is new here at Berry and they don't have a capstone yet. So I don't know. I've really enjoyed my limited time in CRT. I've taken a couple CRT classes while I've been here, and it's been a great way to tie back into that computer science minor or computer science major. I also have a minor in mathematics, which has been a fun way for me to tie in some more logic and critical thinking skills into that CS major. The mathematics and the computer science really tie in well together, and a lot of CS projects involve an incredible amount of numbers and math, and so having that background has been really helpful. In addition to that, I'm also a student athlete. I'm a member of the Berry basketball team, and that's been a wonderful experience. A lot of great things, a lot of tough moments, a lot of hard work, a lot of dedication that's taken, and it's been a great way to learn a lot about that hard work and dedication, but also about interacting with people and how to communicate and work as a team. And those are going to be really valuable skills for me as I am moving forward. I also have a job as a computer science teaching assistant, which has been a wonderful experience. I've gotten to both teach some of the students here at Berry, but also learn a lot from the students here at Berry, which has been really cool. I TA for the Intro to Computer Science class and also the Data Structures and Algorithms class, which has been a cool way to see both the freshmen that are coming in and as they're learning the process, and then also some of the more advanced students and what they're doing with some of those more advanced algorithms, data structures that I got to experience at one time as well. And so that learning and that teamwork and that communication and that social interaction brings me to my theme for today. So my theme is exploring software technologies through developing physically and socially interactive games. So one of my favorite things in college has been learning new technologies and getting to explore different and new ways to build things and create things. And the way that I've chosen to do that a lot of times has been through games, because I love the fun aspect, I love the interactivity of it, and being able to have to make something that's that polished and that involved has forced me to really dive in and learn a lot more about the technology than I otherwise. So for my first project, this brings me to Palm Tag. So what is Palm Tag? So Palm Tag is an online multiplayer game. It is very socially interactive, which ties back into my theme in that it uses that online multiplayer mechanic. It has a bunch of people connected to the game at the same time, and it really explores how a bunch of different people interacting with the game in different ways interact and how that all works out. So why did I want to make this project? So growing up, I didn't have a lot of game consoles. A lot of my free time, I enjoyed playing online browser-based games, often called like IO games, like Slither IO and Agario. And those were really fun experiences for me. And as I was playing them, I always had the sort of naive thought of like, oh, I could make one of those. How hard can it be? They're simple. Their graphics are usually very basic, as you can see from my screenshot over here. And so my naive thought growing up was, it can't be that hard. I could do this. And so coming to college, it was one of two projects that I really wanted to make. This and then a mobile game, which I'll touch on a little bit more later. But for the online multiplayer game, it was, of course, not as easy as I expected it would be. But it was a really fun challenge getting to do that and getting to realize that goal that I had of being able to create this. So the technologies that I used, it was developed in JavaScript and Node.js. I had a little bit of experience with JavaScript, but I had never used Node.js before, which was a big part of the project, building the server connectivity and the backend side of things. So that was a really fun way to learn that technology. I also got to work with building out a server and WebSocket connections, which is how those multiplayer interactions actually work, and kind of pull back the curtain a little bit on those multiplayer interactions. And you sort of learn that that smooth multiplayer connectivity is all a lie. And it all is based on something called eventual consistency, where what you're seeing on your screen and what the other person is seeing on their screen may be two totally different things. But when they get sent back to the server, it all syncs up and the interaction eventually works out. So it's pretty cool, but also sort of brings down the curtain a little bit for that. And so for my next project, I'm going to be talking about Dog Dash, which was my first foray into physically interactive games. As you can see over here, Dog Dash is a endless runner kind of mini platform style game with levels where you're trying to avoid obstacles by jumping on this jump pad that you can see in the bottom of the GIF. So what is Dog Dash? So Dog Dash is, as I said before, it's a endless runner platformer style game. But what I was really exploring with this was the more physically interactive side of games and actually building out how to integrate software and the code that I was writing into the hardware aspect of things. I had never worked with hardware. It was a completely new experience for me, which was kind of intimidating, but was also a really cool way to explore some of those new things. It really challenged me a lot more than I expected it to. You see, okay, I just need to build a box and I need to build a jump pad. How hard can it be? But it really expands the problem space because it means that when something goes wrong, you don't know if it's the code that you wrote or whether it's the physical thing that you built. And so one of the biggest challenges with this was with that button that you can see, that very large the platform that my model Heikel, as some of you may know, is standing on over there. Several times throughout the project, it just stopped working. Oftentimes, to me, it seemed like I hadn't changed anything, and it went from working to not working. And so trying to figure out whether that was a small bug in the code that I had written, or whether that was the physical jump pad that I had made, somehow the wiring going wrong or something, was a really challenging experience, but also a very rewarding experience when I eventually got it to work. So the technology that I used for this was Arduino was the main language that I coded in, which I had never used before this project. It's a variation of C, which is a really low-level language, so you have a lot of control with it, but it's also can be very challenging and tedious to work with. And then also building the physical parts of this game, I used a laser cutter and got to work with wood and acrylic and doing some wiring as well, which I had never done before. So my biggest takeaways from this project were that it's really cool that software can integrate with hardware, but that I don't want to have to worry about that. I love the software side of things, but the hardware side of things is really fun for other people to deal with, but I don't necessarily want to be the one doing that. It was way more of a struggle, and the little bit, I always joke that I spent a day writing the entire code and then 2 weeks building a box for the project, which is about how my time division went for that. And that was not necessarily how I wanted to be spending my time, but it was still a great lesson to be learned. And some of those challenges of physical interactivity and getting users to interact with the things that you've made in the way that you want them to is a big challenge and actually ties me in to my next project. So my next project, this was my capstone project. It's called Color Phase. It's a mobile game. So it's going back to that other dream project that I wanted to build when I got into college, and it's been very cool that I've gotten to realize both of those. So Color Phase is another physically interactive game in that it uses motion tilt controls. So it uses the phone's internal gyroscopic sensor to actually move the ball within the game and navigate through levels. So why did I want to make Color Phase? So growing up, I always loved playing mobile games. I always loved platformers. And some of my earliest experiences with games and technology was playing Super Mario Brothers on the Wii. And that sort of really simple but really engaging, very easy to learn, very easy to get into, but really challenging to master type of game was something that I loved. And as I grew up, I wanted to continue being able to play those types of games, and mobile is a great avenue for that because it's really portable. You can play it anywhere. But unfortunately, the mobile gaming space, especially for mobile platformers, tends to be pretty stale. A lot of the games are very similar. They have either very similar, very simple mechanics, or they're very overcomplicated, trying to be unique by adding more and more stuff into the game, which I don't think makes for a great gaming experience. And so with this project, I really wanted to build the type of mobile platformer that I wanted to play. I thought that would both it would be fun for me in the and it would also allow me to develop it in a way that it was going to be fun for the user because I was one of the target users for that game. So it was my first mobile game. It was developed in Swift, which is Apple's proprietary language for developing for iOS. And I got to learn a lot about Swift, about its built-in physics engine, which is both wonderful to use and incredibly frustrating at times. I also got to learn a lot about motion controls. There's a really cool built-in motion control library in Swift, which has very similarly some amazing features and some weird challenges that you have to conquer when you do that. The biggest thing for me in this game was the iteration and the user testing, because motion controls are kind of nebulous for a lot of people. Not many people necessarily have done a lot with motion control games. And so for me, it was a challenge to figure out how to get it to be simple enough to pick up, as I was talking about before, but also still challenging and giving that satisfaction when you finally do complete a level. And so really early on in the process, basically as soon as I had the game working, I had people start user testing it. And I got some very early feedback, some great feedback. It turns out that what I had initially started working with, I got very used to because I spent so much time playing it. And it turned out that what I had thought was doable did not turn out to be doable for the majority of people. And so scaling that difficulty to make it more accessible for the average user was a really interesting process. I also got a lot of feedback once the game was released about different features, about how to get that interactivity and how to get that engagement of things like timing. So you can see there's a timer in the top left corner of that bottom screenshot, adding a speedrunning timer, getting people to want to go faster, and even once you've played the game, to master the game. Adding stars, as you can see in the top screenshot, so that there are time thresholds that you have to beat to get those stars, and continuing to iterate and make the game more engaging. So the results of this have been really, really cool and really rewarding. I've gotten almost 200 downloads already for this project, which is really exciting. And I also have 20 plus reviews on the App Store, which for only 200-ish downloads has been a pretty exciting number to get to. And this brings me into my last project, I'll say in air quotes, which was my internship that I did over the summer. I interned at a place called Guidewire Software, and I was a member of their microservice team, which means I was on a team developing a very small piece of a much bigger product. And so one of the biggest challenges with this was how to have our service interact with those other servers, which ties into that social interactivity of my theme. And it was a really big challenge because in school, a lot of the times your projects are very small in scope. You have 1, 2, a dozen users potentially. With this, we had over 1 million concurrent users on our project, on our service. And so there are a lot of new challenges that come with that, like data consistency. Like you have multiple users accessing the same thing. What happens with stuff like that? So it was really cool. I also got to learn a ton of new technologies. I learned Spring and Spring Boot. I got to use Jira and Kubernetes, and then Swagger UI that we used to interface with our service a lot of the time, which were things that I didn't know anything about going in, and they were really cool technologies to get to learn about. It's awesome. It was also a really socially interactive work environment. We did pair programming the majority of the time, so I was paired up with one of the full-time employees there, and we got to have that collaboration and that social interactivity of working with other people, which was a great experience. And a socially interactive work environment brings me to what's next. So I am very excited that I have accepted a job at a company called Epic Systems in Verona, Wisconsin, which is right outside Madison. It's a software development company that makes medical platforms for people to contact their doctors, for doctors to manage patients, for hospitals to manage doctors, a bunch of different platforms that sort of all come together into one big ecosystem. And obviously, since it is a medical company, it has to be hugely socially interactive. They're dealing with people and data and users and all kinds of things. And their work culture is also very socially interactive. So I'll get to pull on some of those experiences that I've had working at Guidewire, working here at Barry on some of these games that I've made to continue that social interactivity. And I think those will be some great skills for me to pull on in the future. And that's all I got.